answer, and then we'll get on into that last section there. Now this is on page, really the lesson starts on page 43. The questions start on page 44 that we'll be looking at there. We've got a few folks out today. Of course, Jeff and Laura are traveling back to Alabama to be with family. And Becky also is traveling. She's out in Montana with her mom, celebrating her 85th birthday. That is her mom, is celebrating 85th birthday. Don't tell her I said that. She don't look me. They had been having a really good time, although they've got tons of snow out there. It's really cold. It was, I think she said 2 degrees this morning when I talked to her. So I was like, I don't feel so cold anymore after that. So anyway, got those folks out. Still have some folks sick, of course. Thelma continues to recover. Becky also is still not feeling well, waiting for her procedure coming up this next week. She'll be having a heart cath. So please keep those folks in your prayer. I said Billy is doing a little bit better. They're still trying to figure out everything going on there. So still ongoing as to what's happening, but seems like they made a little bit of headway in discovering what's happening with him. So anyways, please keep those folks in your prayers, and our folks traveling too. With that in mind, let's do a go to God in prayer at this time. If you would please bow with me, we'll pray. Our Father in heaven, we are thankful, Lord, to be able to be here this morning. Please be with us, Father, in our study. Help us to understand the things that we cover this morning. We pray, Lord, you'll help us to look for ways of application in our own individual lives, that we can take these lessons to heart and benefit from studying these things. We do pray, Lord, for those of our congregation who are sick. We pray that you would help each of them to improve in their health, to be better, and also that hopefully they can be back with us soon. We also pray for those who are traveling. Please watch over them and keep them safe. Help them return and be with us once again. And we're especially thankful for your Son and for all the blessings that we enjoy through him. We ask this prayer in his name. Amen. Okay, so as we look back over what we covered last time, we're looking at the 7 seals that are on the scroll that is being opened. As we've seen, there's events associated with each of the seals as they're opened up until after the 7th is open, and the whole book or scroll will then be open at that point. When the first 4 seals are open, what was seen with each of those first 4 seals? There's kind of a pattern or repetition in those first 4. What was it that was seen?
Different colored horses.
Okay, thank you, Vi. The different colored horses are seen. The riders have different things in their hand connected with their mission, what they're going forth to do. And question 2 is the top of page 45. He asks, observe that the horses come forth when the Lamb opens the seals. What is indicated with regard to the relation of the Lamb to these forces? What would you observe or conclude, since the Lamb is opening the seal and then you see the horses and their mission? What would you then conclude in connection with the Lamb and the horses and the horsemen?
It's the beginning of judgment.
Okay, it's the beginning of judgment is definitely what's happening here. It's unfolding, it's beginning. And as far as who's in charge of that judgment, what is implied by the fact that the Lamb is the one who opens the seal and then you see the horses? What's implied concerning the Lamb then?
It's Jesus.
Okay, Jesus is the one that's in charge, right? He's the one who's over the events happening here and the horses being sent out. We didn't talk too much about question 3 here last time. Let me just touch on that. There's a footnote on it here too. But if you go and read Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 through 6, and then chapter 7, verse 1 in Zechariah, it's interesting there that God is talking about how that the nations who had been afflicting Israel, the people of Israel, how that they were at rest at this time. And God wasn't pleased with that. So he sends out 4 chariots pulled by horses, and these are called the 4 winds of heaven. And they go out and observe the nations of the world at that time. And it's observed that they are at rest, they're at peace. God isn't pleased with that. And so he sends out this 4 winds on this, chapter 7, verse 1, so that actually it's going to cause them to be in turmoil, for them to have difficulties. And the purpose of him bringing that up here is it's very similar in wording to the 4 horsemen here in Revelation. So it might be a similar idea of God sending forth pestilence, trouble, judgment, in other words, upon these nations. So kind of a similar theme in Zechariah as we have here in Revelation. So that's what that's about there in question 3. Now, under the 5th seal, the cry of the martyrs here, who are these ones that we've seen pictured here as the 5th seal are open? There's a group of people described there. Who are they?
Martyrs.
Say again, Steve.
Martyrs.
Martyrs, yes. Pauline, what did you say?
The souls that were slain.
Okay, the souls that were slain, exactly. These are the souls that were slain, the martyrs who were slain for the Word of God and its testimony, okay? And they're described as being underneath the altar, okay? And we talked about this last time, but why would they be described as under the altar here? What's the significance, the symbolism of that?
They were sheltered.
Could be that they're sheltered, but we tied into a particular aspect of the altar. When they offered a sacrifice, where was the blood poured out? On the ground by the altar, remember. And the author here suggested that maybe that's a connection here, that why they're pictured as under the altar is because their deaths, their being slain for the Word of God, is pictured as a sacrifice. They are a sacrifice to God. Their blood, being poured out is connected with their soul being poured out. So possibly a connection there. That's why they're underneath the altar. They're pictured as a sacrifice for the Lord in the fact that they were slain. And we talked about how that is a common image used in the New Testament, the idea of sacrifice, being made by Christians, especially those who give their life for the Lord. Okay, and what was they crying? As they're under the altar, they're crying something out to the Lord. Anybody remember what that was?
They cried for deliverance.
Well, I don't know if maybe deliverance is exactly the word. It has to do with those who had killed them. What were they calling for?
They wanted them punished.
Okay, they wanted vengeance upon them. Yes. So not as much deliverance for these folks. They'd already had died, but they were calling for the Lord's vengeance on those who had taken their life, who had caused their souls to be taken. So that was what they were crying for. And this is not in the question, but how did God reply to that? Did he immediately say, okay, vengeance is going to be meted out right now? Or what did he say? Say,
They had to wait a while.
that's right, you gotta wait a little while. It's coming, but not yet. There's gonna be a little bit of time before this takes place. Okay, what is the significance, question 4, of the white robe that was given to each of them? What do you think that symbolizes?
was to show that they were martyrs.
It showed that they were martyrs, and what else? What else can we add to that? It's given to them because of their being martyrs, because of their victory. What other significance might be from the robe?
Justification.
Justification, again, think of it as a white robe, purity, justification, which should be involved in that, they're justified before God, they're pure before Him. Also, I think the idea, this is maybe so fundamental that, we gloss over, but as a reward too, this is their reward for their faithfulness. They're given this robe. But again, I think the significance of it being white, as Pauline said, again, is their purity, their innocence before God. So this is their reward for being victorious. Okay, over on the next page, page 46, as we continue our review here, we already, we did. Question 5, there is going to be a delay here before vengeance is given upon the ones who took the lives of the martyrs. But what had to happen, we're told, before they could be vindicated? Something had to happen.
Their fellow servants had to be killed.
Okay, very good, Steve. That's exactly right. The other Christians, there's other martyrs who would have to themselves be killed and slain. The number would have to be full before this would take place, is brought out there. Okay, we talked about this last time, that question 6 or point 6, you can think of the cry of the martyrs here as kind of a key to the message of Revelation. This scene indicates what this revelation is all about. As you look at these different references there under point 6, again and again there is references throughout the book of Revelation pointing back to these martyrs and to the fact that they have been slain, and they are crying for vengeance against their persecutors. And so a key theme in Revelation, key message, is that the persecutors, the ones who took their lives, will be judged. They will be punished. Their time is coming for them to receive their just due, that these martyrs will be avenged. And if you read those references, you've seen that repeated again and again, that's a theme running throughout the book here. Okay? And then question 7, take note of a little time. Again, John was telling just a little time before this takes place. And again, he's asking here, could that maybe be another insight into the time element of the events we're looking at? In other words, Revelation, something happening over a huge expanse of time, or is it something coming in the near future? And as we said in the introduction, it seems that this is looking at events more in the near future for them, and in the coming years, close to their time will be the time frame for this. Okay, so having reviewed that material, let's go now to the 6th seal that is opened, and what happens when it is opened. This begins in verse 12.
The stars fall from the sky like figs from a tree.
Okay, all right. This is a kind of a cosmic event, isn't it? Yeah. Well, let's read and see what all occurs here. I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it's shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? All right. So this is a very, very mighty, powerful vision here given of what takes place, what John sees when the sixth seal is opened up, the scroll is unrolled a little bit more to show what is going on. A lot of different type of cosmic, we might say, phenomenon. A lot of it in the heavens, more so than on the earth, is taking place. But some things on the earth too, obviously. The first thing described there is a great earthquake. How quote, unsettling is an earthquake? You may have been in a big earthquake before. Anybody? I haven't. We have small earthquakes frequently here, and a lot of times we don't even necessarily notice them. When they are large enough to notice them, it's a little unsettling, to hear that rumbling sound, and some of your house is kind of shaking. But if you ever looked at a video of the big earthquakes, then you talk about something scary. I mean, literally, the whole earth is shaking, and it's an incredible phenomenon to experience. So this is the first thing that is happening here, is a great earthquake that shakes the earth. The second thing mentioned here is the sun becomes black as sackcloth of hair. Now, again, I don't have any sackcloth. I've read about what it's supposed to be, but I just take it that, again, it's like a type of fabric, cloth that is made of hair, and it must be pretty thick, pretty dark. It's as if the sun is draped in a cloth, or a veil is put over the sun, okay? Again, to try to visualize this, remember having our eclipse just a few years ago? Did most people get to see that? Did you look outside and check it out? I remember we went over to Mom's property and waited and watched the whole thing. How weird was that? To be in the middle of the day and it get dark as night. It's really weird, wasn't it?
All the insects that are singing at night started singing.
Yeah, that's true. It's so weird. It get dark, and then the bugs and all that stuff from nighttime came out. They thought it was nighttime. So again, if we didn't know it was an eclipse, it'd be pretty scary, to see that. So that's another thing that happens: is the sun becomes dark, and the moon becomes like blood. And again, you think of a lunar eclipse. As the moon is being covered, it turns blood red. And again, it's something really odd to see when that happens.
I saw that in Hawaii.
Really?
The blood moon.
Oh, okay. And it's really strange looking, isn't it? I mean, it's just a little disturbing, to see the moon that color. And that's what is happening here. And again, there's no, natural explanation. This is all the doing of God. This different things happening here as judgment. And then verse 13, definitely illustrating that this is not just a natural occurrence or temporary. We see that the stars of heaven fall to the earth. So again, these other things weren't disturbing. This certainly would, to see the stars of heaven fall into the earth. And I don't take this to mean that it's like we talk about a falling star, which is a meteorite. I take it here, he's saying literally the stars that are supposed to be permanent are coming down. They are falling away. So, something again very, very scary is taking place here. The image to describe what it's like is interesting too. Like a fig tree dropping its figs when shaken by a mighty wind. We can visualize that, can't we? You think about a fruit tree and it's shaken in the wind and the fruit just drops off, If you can't visualize that, just think about the leaves coming off. Here recently when the wind blows, you see them coming out. The stars were falling like that when these things took place. So some very scary images there. And then the next one, the last one here, verse 14, is probably the scariest of all. The sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and then every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Again, we look up into the heavens and we see the sky above us. It kind of looks like a covering to the eye. Well, imagine if that just was suddenly just kind of like rolled up, just taken away. It's like, someone reaches and just opens up the sky from the earth, and it's just the sky is removed. And the significance of this is that, God is looking down right upon the earth, and the people evidently can see God as this is rolled away. And so obviously very terrifying. And then again, in connection with the idea of the earthquake, the mountains and islands are actually moved out of their place. Try to think about that. You know, you have a great island in the ocean, it's actually moved out of its position. Our Smoky Mountains, suddenly they're moved from where they were. I mean, it's just, again, you know, things it's hard to imagine. But obviously very catastrophic events that's being described here. So the next part of this describes the impact that it has upon people who are on the earth at this point. Notice from the greatest to the least here, from those of the greatest power and might and authority down to the most lowly of men, all of them are terrified by what happens. And what do out of their terror, seeing these events taking place overhead and on the earth? What do they try to do to try to get some type of security? They hide, yeah, they're going to hide. And the places they're hiding is pretty interesting too. They're hiding themselves in the caves, in the rocks of the mountains. And they actually say the mountains and rocks, they're wanting the mountains to fall on them so that they'd be hidden from the face of him who sits on the throne and the wrath of the Lamb. What they're really afraid of is God's wrath, God's judgment. Here, all these things have happened, and God is looking down upon them, and they're terrified of his judgment, and so they're trying to hide anywhere that they can find. They even want the rocks to cover them up so that they will not have to face his wrath. And in fact, in verse 17, they state this question: for the great day of his wrath has come. Who is able to stand? Who can stand in the judgment of God? Well, let's notice a few points brought out here in your books. I think help us to dig in a little bit deeper here and understand it. The first one is very interesting. He asks us to study this scene in the light of both Old Testament and New Testament parallels. In other words, other passages that use similar language to this. And he actually gives us the references here so we can look them up. I hope that you had a chance to read these. If you did, you read these. The first one's in Isaiah chapter 2, verses 10 through 22. And who is being judged in that passage? Anybody remember from your reading? This is actually a judgment on Judah, the southern kingdom of Judah. Remember, as Isaiah is writing, the nation of Israel has been divided into two parts. There's the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom is going to be carried off by the Assyrians, the southern kingdom by the Babylonians. And he seems to be talking to the southern kingdom of Judah. So again, Isaiah 2. Let's turn back there for just a moment. And notice, again, the similarity in the wording of Isaiah describing the judgment on Judah here. Let's see if we notice anything similar. Okay? So Isaiah 2, he says, begin at verse 10. If you want to back up just a little bit, though, look up at verse 5. He says, O house of Jacob, come let us walk in the light of the Lord. For you have forsaken your people, the house of Jacob. And he goes on talking about it. But this is talking about peoples of Israel here. And notice verse 10. This is Isaiah saying to them concerning judgment coming upon them. He says, enter into the rock, hide in the dust from the terror of the Lord and the glory of his majesty. Look on down verse 13. Upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, upon all the oaks of Bashan, upon all the high mountains, upon all the high hills that are lifted up, upon every high tower, upon every fortified wall, upon all the ships of Tarshish, upon all the beautiful slopes, the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, be brought low. The idols will be utterly abolished. Verse 19, they shall go into the holes of the rocks, into the caves of the earth, from the terror of the Lord and the glory of his majesty, when he arises to shake the earth mightily. Okay, see any similarities there to what we read in Revelation? Obviously, very similar. Again, the idea of people being so terrified that they are going into the holes, the caves, trying to hide from the terror of the Lord. Now, again, keep in mind here, is Isaiah talking about the final judgment of God upon all of humanity? Jake's shaking his head no, and he's right. It's not. It's talking about God's judgment upon Israel, particularly, I think in this case, probably the southern kingdom of Judah is under consideration. But it's not the final judgment here. This is talking about the judgment of God upon that nation. Okay? He has a reference over to chapter 13. In chapter 13, the nation under consideration there is Babylon. That God will use Babylon, of course, to punish the southern kingdom of Judah, but God will then punish Babylon itself. And the way he describes that in chapter 13, again, has similar type images or imagery there as well. Notice verse 4, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like that of many people. Talks about this army the Lord is mustering, coming to wage war against Babylon. Talks about how that down in verse 7, the people of Babylon, the warriors and all, that they're going to be basically powerless. They're going to be afraid. Down in verse 9, the day of the Lord comes cruel with both wrath and fierce anger to lay the land desolate. Verse 10, the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. Okay? Again, notice the cosmic disturbance there, the things happening in the heavens. And goes on, describes what will happen to that nation. Down in verse 13, I will shake the heavens, and the earth will move out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, in the day of his fierce anger. And he goes on to talk about how that land will become so desolate after the Medes fight against it, that the glory of Babylon will be taken away. It'll just be animals that are living in the city after that. It'll be so desolate. And of course, history actually bears out that is what happened. And that even the Arabian won't pitch their tents there anymore because it's such a desolate, haunted place. But when it's talking about these kind of cosmic phenomenon that's described here, the stars of heaven, the constellations not giving light, the sun darkened, the moon will not give its light, the earth shaken out of its place. Do you think he's saying that those things literally took place when Babylon was defeated by the Medes and Persians? Or is this symbolic, a way of trying to get over to them the terrible nature of the judgment? What do y'all think? Symbolic. I would say so too. That again, we'll see this pattern, but in each of these, they describe similar type of events. And again, there's no, if we're thinking historically, there's no record of those type of things happening at that point in time. And again, you think of the severity of what's described there. It doesn't seem to be literal. We know this is something that took place in the past. Again, it's a way of the prophet getting over to them the great calamity that's going to befall Babylon. It'll be as if the whole universe is being destroyed because destruction is coming upon their nation. The nation will be destroyed. And if there's any doubt, again, you go on and look at some of these others. Chapter 34 deals with Edom, the nation of Edom. And he has, especially it says there verse 8, but Edom is described as being destroyed. And again, some similar type images are used there of Edom. I'll get verse 8 here. It says, for it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, the year of recompense for the cause of Zion. And again, you look at what else described there, of the utter destruction of Edom. And these other references here, Ezekiel talks about Egypt being destroyed or judged. Hosea chapter 10, verses 5 through 8 describes the northern kingdom of Israel. and their destruction. Joel chapter 2 talks about judgment upon all the nations, and yet talks about, in leading up to that, again, these kind of cosmic disturbances and phenomenon are observed. Similarly, when you come to the New Testament in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus talks about the destruction of Jerusalem, when, for all practical purposes, the nation of Israel is just about stamped out, because Jerusalem is just destroyed, is just, wiped out to the ground. And in those passages, Jesus uses similar images of, of great natural disaster and even cosmic disaster taking place in connection with the destruction of Jerusalem. And again, I've known different ones who, in trying to prove different points about when that took place, they'll try to say, well, there was actual this or that took place back there. But again, I don't think there's evidence of the extent of the destruction, the cosmic destruction that Jesus describes there. Can we not again understand that Jesus is using symbolism there to show the devastation, the greatness of the fall of this nation, to get the point over that this is going to be a life-changing event, not just life, a history-changing event that takes place. And these natural phenomena are used to get over the severity and the significance of this. But in all of these, you have very similar type images being used to demonstrate this. And then we come to Revelation, and again, very similar type images are made. And can we not understand that it is symbolic for what is going to take place as a judgment against these people who have persecuted the Christians? They will suffer. It'll be a calamity. But some of these images are used to show the greatness of that calamity against them. Does that make sense to everybody? This is one of those things that's a little bit more difficult as we study. You have to kind of understand the idea of symbolism used in the prophecies concerning these nations. But I think if you get that, you understand that is used as imagery, as symbols to get over a point to those hearing it. It helps a lot because you kind of understand all of these as pictures of God's judgment, and it helps Revelation to make a lot more sense to us as well. So, any questions on that or confusion about that? I'm not getting any reactions, so I don't know if you guys get it or don't get it. Okay, well, we'll move on. I hope that you kind of get the point he's made. If you don't, tell me, and we'll go over it a little bit more. But again, as he's saying here, what is anticipated in these verses? Is it the end of the world, or is the earthquake and the attending cosmic upheaval symbolic of something else? And to me, looking at all these, it shows me that it is symbolizing the punishment of these nations as they fall, as they receive judgment from the wickedness that they have done to in Revelation, the Christians. In the other passages, it was the evil they had done to the people of God, Israel, or sometimes it was even punishment upon Israel for the evil that they had done. And these descriptions are making the severity of that known to them. Okay, the next question here, question 2, is saying, do you see a connection between the sixth seal, all this, terrible things that happen, and the fear of the people? Do you see a connection between that and the cry of the martyrs in the fifth seal? The martyrs are crying out, we have been killed, we have been slain. Lord, when will you avenge our blood upon these wicked people who did this, upon the nation who has done these things against us? And then in the sixth seal, you have this great scene of judgment taking place. And you have all these people from great to the smallest. They're in terror of the judgment of the Lord. Do you see a connection between the two? What do you think?
Is the martyrs were avenged?
Okay, yeah. It's again, I think he's showing to the martyrs here Here's the vengeance. Here's the judgment that is coming upon those who have afflicted you. It's a little glimpse into the future here, if you want to look at it that way. That, okay, here is what will happen to those people at a point just in the near future. And it's a terrible judgment that will fall upon them. They'll get what they deserved here when this takes place. So the sixth seal is kind of almost an answer to the fifth seal. The fifth seal is the martyrs, their cry. The sixth seal is showing them, okay, look, this is what's going to happen. As this seal is open, here is a look into the punishment, the judgment, the vengeance upon those who have persecuted the people of God. And we see here that they are terrified. And I think that's the answer to question 3. And what do all these classes have in common? They're all in fear of the judgment of God. They're all in fear of the wrath of God coming upon them. And then question 4 leads into the next section. But it says, what is their question raised in anticipation of the coming judgment? What did they say at the end of this section? What's their question?
Who could stand?
That's it. Thank you, Bob. Who can stand in this great day of His wrath? When the wrath of God has come, who's going to be able to stand? Okay. Now, as you go into chapter 7, well, actually, it's an answer to that. There will be some who stand. And looking ahead, if you've read, you know the answer. But even if not, you might guess it. Who do you think will be able to stand when the judgment of God comes? The Christians, the faithful, yeah. And that's what chapter 7 is about. There are going to be those who are faithful that are going to be, we'll say, spared from that judgment. They're going to be helped through that judgment, okay? And that's what chapter 7 is about. As he titles it over on page 47, 2 consolatory views. In other words, 2 views that's going to bring consolation to the people, the faithful people, when these things take place, is what chapter 7 is all about, before the final seal comes to take place, before it is open. Okay, let me look over my notes here real quick, see if I've missed anything. While I am, do you guys have questions or comments as you look at all this? Any thoughts come to your mind as we look at all this? Okay, well, I think we covered everything that I was wanting to cover for this. Well, we're a little bit early. We've got about 4 minutes left, but that's okay. This is probably a good place to stop. Let me just, again, encourage you to, of course, be reading ahead. As we said, chapter 7 is going to be kind of an interruption in the opening of the seals. And we're going to see that certain special events are taking place here to preserve the faithful. So read about that and see what is going to take place there. And, of course, the questions and footnotes can help you a whole lot in understanding that. So make sure and look through this page 47 and 48 in connection with that. It'll help you a lot in understanding. All right. Well, let's stop there. It's a good place to stop, and we'll take a break. I usually go way over, so I'll give you a little extra time today to make up for that.